Hello everyone, this is CJ with Cycletron. Well, to paraphrase Dickens, it is the best of times and it is the worst of times for motorcycles. So let me explain why. To illustrate why I think these are the best of times for motorcycles, I recently watched the official launch video for the Suzuki Hayabusa. I was really impressed with all the advanced technology in this new bike. It has over 180 horsepower, yet it's got all these electronic rider aids that can tame it to the level of just about any amount of rider experience. But one thing that jumped out at me about the launch video was the elaborate exhaust system that this thing has. I mean, the exhaust system houses 3 catalytic converters. Suzuki in their video indicated that this was done in order to comply with Euro 5 emission standards. So to me, the quality and functionality of motorcycles, as well as the wide selection of motorcycles that's out there right now, is its best it's ever been. But the increasing amount of environmental and safety regulations also present a concern for the future viability of motorcycling. Going back to the Suzuki Hayabusa, it seems that more and more bikes are getting these massive exhaust systems to make them quieter and to lower air emissions. I recently did a video remarking about the massively ugly, in my view, exhaust system on the Honda Rebel 1100. I mean, it's a great bike, but the exhaust system just didn't do it for me. But that also got me thinking, why are the Euro 5 emission regulations dictating how new motorcycles have to be equipped here in the United States? We've got much less stringent emission standards, except for California, of course. The short answer is that the European Union has twice the motorcycle market as the United States. They sell about 900,000 new motorcycles a year to the United States' 450,000 motorcycles each year. That means it's going to be a lot easier for motorcycle manufacturers to produce bikes that meet the stringent European regulations and just sell them everywhere else in the world. The days of motorcycle manufacturers making 49 state models for the US are long gone. So what does that mean for motorcycles sold in the United States now? Well, that means motorcycles are going to have more restrictive air intakes and exhaust systems. Most bikes will have to have exhaust with catalytic converters. Now, keep in mind, based on the research that I did, the motorcycles take about 8% of the vehicle market in Europe and only about 2% here in the United States. In most developed countries, motorcycles are ridden for recreation instead of being ridden as a primary means of transportation. I came across this website from a Dallas area Harley Davidson dealer that indicates that most motorcycles are ridden 2,000 to 3,000 miles a year. And even for tours are ridden between 5,000 and 6,000 miles per year on average, which is far less than the 12,000 miles per year that an average car is driven. Yet motorcycle manufacturers are expected to adhere to the same stringent emission standards as vehicles have to. When Harley Davidson released their 2021 model line in January, word quickly spread that the ECU ports, the computer connector, was no longer going to be compatible with aftermarket tuners. And that is going to take probably 3 or 4 months for these aftermarket companies to develop tuners that would interface with the Harley ECU. So Harley kind of got, some people thought that was Harley's idea, but you have to go back about 5 years to 2016 when the EPA here in the United States jumped on Harley with both feet and fined them $15 million over their selling and using tuners on aftermarket exhaust upgrades. $12 million of this $15 million fine was for civil penalties, and $3 million was essentially confiscated by the EPA in order to pay for conversion of wood stoves to cleaner burning stoves in people's homes. I mean, what does Harley Davidson have to do with wood burning stoves in some people's homes? To me, the EPA made it seem like that Harley had made a bunch of toddlers into chain smokers. I mean, how long is it going to be before the EPA just puts these aftermarket tuners and exhaust manufacturers out of business? Now, I may or may not have personal experience putting an aftermarket Two Brothers full exhaust system on a Kawasaki 650 Vulcan S that my son rides around town. Now, I understand the issue of loud exhaust might be a bit controversial relative to motorcycles, but shouldn't the individual be able to decide what kind of exhaust system they want to have on their bike? I mean, to me, particularly V-twin bikes that have an exhaust note that can't really be heard are rather soulless. Also, I think most people with louder pipes on their bikes have enough sense not to get too much on the throttle early in the morning or late at night if they're going through the neighborhood or if they're in a highly developed part of town. And if they don't have that sense, I'm sure there's enough noise ordinance in place that could address the situation. Some riders are worried that loud pipes on their bikes will make the general public hate motorcycles and motorcycle riders, maybe even more than they do now. But who cares? I mean, how about we make a deal with them that we'll go to quiet pipes once distracted driving is no longer a thing. I understand that putting such exhaust systems on a bike is not even possible for many countries. I've heard that France and England have started experimenting with basically sound cameras that'll send you a ticket if your bike's too loud, much as how a red light camera operates. Earlier I mentioned that environmental compliance measures are increasing the cost of motorcycles. However, such requirements are also eliminating some bikes from the market, like the Yamaha VMAX or the Harley Sportster, where it's no longer sold in Europe. Does anyone remember two-stroke street bikes? So motorcycle manufacturers will continue to adapt to these environmental regulations by redesigning their bikes, incorporating various changes in the fueling and exhaust systems. They'll also make changes in the engine design, such as going more and more towards water cooling. But even those measurements won't be enough over time because various regulatory agencies and manufacturers are pledging to eliminate the sale of new vehicles with internal combustion engines by the year 2035. Apparently, this is to try and achieve a goal of zero carbon emissions by 2050. This point was recently underscored by General Motors just about a week or so ago when they announced that they plan to phase out the internal combustion engine in their vehicles by 2035. This was the same company up until just recently that was suing the state of California over California's mileage regulations, vehicle mileage regulations. So I guess their plans changed with the change in politics. So does that mean motorcycles will have to go electric within the next few years? That may be the goal for regulators and some vehicle manufacturers, but that may or may not be desirable with all motorcycle and sport car enthusiasts. I've ridden an electric motorcycle. I've ridden a Livewire. It's a great bike, but it doesn't take the place of my V-twin Street Glide and some of the older bikes that I have with internal combustion engines. I think there can be both, but I just don't believe it needs to be rammed down everybody's throat to switch to electric. What about in the future, if you have a vehicle with an internal combustion engine, is it an option to run your vehicle on a private road or track? Well, joining a private race club is very expensive and is out of the reach of most people. But even those people that can afford to join a private club like that are having trouble. There's a race club in my area. It's out in the sticks. The nearest house is probably 1 or 2 miles away from this thing, and there's people that live over 5 miles away that are fighting this facility's ability to get special use permits for their periodic events because they think it's going to be too noisy. The same people fighting these types of things are the same ones that have no problem going to a NFL stadium where it's going to be way louder than anything going on at these tracks. So I hope that the internal combustion engine won't be eliminated altogether from motorcycles or performance cars anytime soon. because there's still a lot of obstacles for full electrification of vehicles. First, the power, the electrical power generation to provide the charging for those vehicles in the United States anyway, over 60% comes from coal and natural gas burning, with another 20% from nuclear power plants. Of course, nuclear has been slowly killed off in this country, and many of the plants are well over 50 years in age, 50, 60 even, and those plants are going to have increasing difficulty getting new licenses to extend their operating life. It may be prohibitively expensive in terms of what they'd have to do to make that happen. So, switching over to all electric vehicles would require an additional 25% increase in power production in the United States. So that would have to come from burning additional coal, gas, and expanding renewables. So I'm thinking, in terms of motorcycles, why does this make sense to have all these regulations and push for full electrification for a vehicle segment that comprises 2% of the total here in the United States? I mean, getting back to motorcycle exhausts, the EU wants to reduce exhaust sound emissions from 74 decibels to 68 decibels by 2026. I mean, this level isn't much greater than that of a normal conversation, which is 60 decibels. I mean, to me, this is nonsense. The ambient noise on most highways is 70 to 80 decibels at a distance of 50 feet away from the highway. And most of this road noise comes from the tires running over the pavement. So why does a motorcycle need to be at a sound level of 68 decibels at the exhaust pipe? At 50 feet, a source at 68 decibels would be 34 decibels. And so that's barely over the noise or the sound level of a whisper, which is 30 decibels. It seems to me that the motorcycle industry in the United States is being increasingly dominated by regulators in the European Union. Ironically, to me anyway, most motorcycle-related legislative efforts in the United States seem to involve overturning helmet laws. I personally believe in personal choice in what type of gear a person decides to wear when they ride, if they decide to wear it. But it's just ironic that the real battle may involve having many of the motorcycles that we like to ride legislated right out from under us. So to me, the takeaway is that motorcycles right now are the best they've ever been, and as a whole, and we should enjoy them while we can, because who knows how much longer it'll last. So please let me know your thoughts in the comments section, and please stay tuned for future videos. Thanks very much.